In the dead of night, within the confines of a forsaken ditch, a commotion stirs within a repulsive pile of garbage. Emerging from its depths, a hand breaches the surface, reaching into the wilderness. Determined to shine despite his circumstances, a young man rises from the filth, sword in hand, poised on one knee. If the spark within you still burns bright, a star surely resides within. Standing before the open doors of a workshop, the young man gazes upon a sword adorning the entrance to the pub. No matter how often he beholds it, the weapon mesmerizes and enchants him. "I knew I'd find you here again," a voice interrupts from behind. It's Amina, a charming girl in a red skirt and white shirt. She gently admonishes Vlad for his recent preoccupation. Vlad pleads for solitude, citing exhaustion from his relentless distractions. Emma remains unconvinced, insisting that rumors swirl around Vlad due to his aimless wandering through the city. Perplexed, Vlad inquires about the nature of these rumors. Emma's response is cryptic, questioning whether Vlad still hears voices when handling elongated objects like sticks. Suddenly, a deafening silence descends as Emma reproaches Vlad about his past actions. Without warning, lightning strikes Vlad, racking him with excruciating agony. Bewildered by the sudden appearance of lightning in the clear sky, Vlad grapples with the inexplicable phenomenon. Yaina urges Vlad to gather himself, emphasizing the importance of meeting the new bishop, known for his keen observation of signs. Recently transferred from the Inquisitors, the bishop's scrutiny could lead to dire consequences, including execution by burning at the stake. Resisting Yaina's ominous warnings, Vlad pleads for her to cease her frightful tales. However, she reminds him of the gravity of his situation, cautioning that many have witnessed his ordeal with the lightning. With whispers circulating about his supposed enchantment, Vlad faces the looming threat of exposure to the church and its consequences. Vlad asserts that he won't be coerced into going to church over a mere glance at a sword. Amina questions why he wouldn't purchase it even on credit, to which Vlad responds that it's still too costly. Curious, Amina probes further, asking how much such a coveted weapon would cost at a blacksmith's shop on the outskirts. After pondering for a moment, Vlad estimates the price at 5 gold pieces. Absurd. 5 gold pieces for a mere piece of iron, he exclaims, aware that such a sum could sustain Amina in revelry for an entire year. Suddenly, a menacing growl emanates from the workshop, and a formidable-looking old man with unkempt hair emerges, demanding that the unwelcome intruders leave. He declares that the sword adorning the wall is not meant for riffraff. Amina attempts to reason with the irate blacksmith, pointing out that no one else would buy the sword from him, as it remains hidden away in the backyard, only visible to locals. However, her words only serve to further enrage the man, who is unaccustomed to being labeled as insane. Unfazed, Amina refuses to back down from the confrontation. Amina questions why the old man is making such a fuss over a sword that would only see occasional use in its lifetime, especially considering his impending mortality and advanced age. Enraged, the white-haired blacksmith retorts with a furious cry, berating Amina as a half-baked loser destined for dishwashing duty at the tavern. Amina, seething with indignation, refuses to accept such derogatory remarks, asserting her identity as a fully capable woman. Vlad intervenes, urging her to let go of the confrontation and leading her away, seeking to avoid escalating the situation needlessly. Reluctantly, Amina acquiesces, realizing she may have spoken out of turn. Observing the departing pair, the old man reflects on Amina's apparent lack of experience with hardship, attributing her venomous retorts to a life free from want. Recalling his own acts of charity in the past, the old man curses under his breath before returning to his workshop. Glancing at the spot where Vlad had stood moments before, the old man notices the deep imprints of his footprints in the street's mud. Contemplating the need to earn money, he grasps the sword firmly in his hands, resolving to resume his work. As the old man reflects on the challenges facing young men in the slums, he acknowledges the rarity of ambition among the area's inhabitants. Determined to uphold his promise to sell the sword to anyone who can escape this cycle of poverty, He refuses to let his masterpiece languish in the depths of despair. It's remarkable, he muses, even amidst the squalor, there exists something that shines of its own accord. Situated at the nexus of all northern roads and bolstered by the prestige of the House of Bite, the beacon of the north, Shora, yet where there is light, there must also be shadow. The slums epitomize this dichotomy, a gathering of the dirtiest and most unsightly elements. Inside the establishment, adorned with a sign featuring a delicate female profile, unsavory patrons leer at girls who likely offer their bodies for sale. A high-pitched scream pierces the air from a second-floor balcony, where a half-naked brute drags a local girl by her hair. He shouted at her, "You should give up. You're trying to deceive your customers." The prostitute vehemently denied any wrongdoing, but he persisted, accusing her of selling him ineffective drugs under the guise of a seasoned mercenary. As the goon approached the man holding the box, Vlad, the candle seller, the mercenary demanded to speak to Madame, insisting Vlad call her immediately. Vlad clarified that only gold coins would suffice, dismissing the silver ones presented by the man as inadequate payment for the purportedly subpar service. The mercenary scoffed at the notion of paying gold for such lackluster service, even suggesting Vlad summon his mother if Madame wasn't available. The young man blamed Vlad for selling candles that burned out prematurely, likening them to one-minute wonders. Vlad retorted, suggesting the man's dissatisfaction stemmed from his own expectations, questioning what he anticipated from a one-minute candle. "If you're such a beggar, then jam your wife's." The mercenary's eyes bulge, and his face flushes red with anger. Vlad, unfazed, suggests verifying the burn time of his candles with a nearby clock. He proposes a grim consequence if they fail to last 5 minutes. The woman the mercenary holds by the hair will be at his mercy. Refusing to believe Vlad, the mercenary confronts him with hostility. Vlad, undeterred, offers to test the candles, threatening violence if they don't meet the promised burn time. The mercenary trembles, his grip on the prostitute's hair tightening. With a match, Vlad ignites the candle, and a sense of impending doom fills the room. The onlookers, including the captive woman, become transfixed by the spectacle, while patrons downstairs also tune in to the unfolding drama. Vlad fixes his gaze on his client. "The candle burned out," he asserts. The overweight man turns to the clock in disbelief. "I'll be damned," he exclaims. "Your candle burned for less than 5 minutes, you swindler." Without hesitation, Vlad strikes the stick between the man's eyes. He releases his grip on the prostitute, staggering backwards with blood streaming from his nose. "It burned for 5 minutes," Vlad retorts, his voice laced with anger. With a swift motion, he kicks the customer hard in the rear, sending him sprawling once again. Clutching his jaw, the mercenary rises from the ground, his gaze fixed on Vlad, who stands poised with the stick. "You're a dead man today," the mercenary vows, his tone menacing. The fat man extends a pleading hand, but it's met with another blow from Vlad's stick. Despite acknowledging that he didn't initiate the conflict and doubts the beaten man's claims of being a mercenary, given his weight, Vlad recalls the client's desire to speak with his deceased mother. Ignoring the victim's protests, Vlad orders him to leave the premises. Inside, someone is enjoying thick sausages, tuning into the dispute over the allegedly faulty candles. Vlad, the speaker, addresses Jorge, expressing concern about interference in their affairs. Jorge responds with a grunt, occupied with his meal. Furious that someone has tampered with the sacred pink candles for selfish gain, Vlad is determined to launch an investigation. The girl behind the bar assures him he must proceed. Although Vlad hesitates, claiming he's no detective, she confidently declares she has already identified the culprit. The revelation startles Jorge, prompting the girl to disclose her findings. This is Marcella, Madam of the Smiles of the Rose. She admits to profiting from the deception of drunken patrons. Seated on bar stools, Jorge and Vlad absorb the news. Vlad descends the stairs, reflecting aloud on his unwitting assault on an innocent person. However, he rationalizes his actions in light of Madame Marcella's deception. As he exits, Vlad muses on the irony of being portrayed as the hero in the establishment's promotional material. From the side, Vlad hears a voice remark, "Looks like you had quite the success yesterday, huh?" It's the burly young man with earrings in his ears. He commends Vlad's performance, noting how remarkable it is that such events occur whenever Vlad is absent. He then reveals that Vlad has been profitable for the owners by selling candles. Vlad perceives these opportunists as constantly encroaching on the earnings of honest laborers. "What's your angle, Barley?" Vlad questions the provocateur. Barley, backed by a robust support group, exudes confidence. "Don't look so sour," he remarks to Vlad, not demanding restitution for what Vlad supposedly concealed from the owners, but instead proposing a deal. "What sort of deal?" Vlad inquires. Barley responds, "You give me a couple of coins, and I'll offer you something of interest." He produces a pickpocket, a hapless, inept figure, clutching a frightened young boy of about 6 or 7. Barley offers the child for a mere 40 silver coins, a bargain indeed. "What happened to his ankles and fingers?" Vlad queries. Barley responds that he wouldn't have attempted to sell the child if his limbs were already broken. The boy endured some beating, but, in Barley's words, he's relatively fine. Enraged, Vlad curses under his breath and hands over the requested amount to the extortionists. Once they depart, leaving the child behind, Vlad shouts after them, "Next time, don't bother calling me. Just deal with them then and there." "We're not killers, we're members of an organization," Barley retorts before bidding farewell. Vlad admonishes the villains, calling them out for preying on the vulnerable. Reflecting on Vlad's actions, they ponder his motives, sensing his commitment to managing the local riffraff in some capacity. Turning his attention to the boy, Ned, Vlad's eyes blaze with anger. He apologizes before noticing something amiss with the child's hand. "Did they injure you?" Vlad asks with concern, fearing the worst. Ned, rubbing his neck, reassures Vlad that his limb is intact. "Then get lost, you fool, before I lose my temper." Vlad bellows at him. After expressing his gratitude to his rescuer, Ned vanishes into the alley. The hero is deeply dismayed. His quest to gather 5 gold coins feels more distant than ever. At the city port, a sailboat is moored at the pier. A skiff with 3 sailors approaches it. But the boy got lucky, someone notes, because his hand doesn't look like that. They gesture towards a sailor who raises his upper limb, revealing the absence of his little and ring fingers. This is Harbin, a whaler hailing from Captain Hoover's lineage. He was given his moniker as a lesson to others by decree of the local bishop. Seated beside Harbin at a table, Vlad listens intently as Harbin recounts another noteworthy event in the city. A scandal involving counterfeit candles at the Smile of the Rose establishment. Vlad is taken aback that such seemingly trivial news has reached his companion. He explains that rumors about the fraud had circulated for some time, but were dismissed as dubious. According to Vlad, Madame was not the type to engage in such deceitful practices. She had assured him of this herself, and Jorge corroborated her integrity. These were not individuals who would stir up trouble without cause. Harbin counters, suggesting that there must be a motive behind the rumors. "And what might that be?" Vlad inquires. 9 times out of 10, it's for money, and they need it urgently, Harbin warns, urging Vlad to exercise caution. As the organization swiftly mobilizes to raise funds, a rare occurrence typically reserved for conflicts with rival factions, Vlad ponders the implications. The shores of Slum M are ruled by 5 bosses: Tig, Cutter, Pig Cutter, Whaler, and the Money Grubber, representing the dark side of life. Their sudden appearance, lurking in the shadows, raises alarm. "Hey, rookie, where's your boss?" demands One-Armed Jack, exuding a menacing aura. Vlad senses impending danger, as ominous events often unfold without warning. As he observes Jack's sinister demeanor, Vlad contemplates the possibility of a looming conflict, especially considering the Money Grubber's unexpected visit to Rose's Smile. Could this signal the onset of war? Vlad wonders anxiously. A young ruffian with a scar etched across his face stands out amidst the bandits who have barged into the establishment. Baring his teeth, He asserts that the money grubber's inquiries should be promptly and truthfully answered by the rookie. Vlad grimaces in irritation, stating that he merely sells candles and is unaware of anyone's whereabouts. The scoundrel looms menacingly over Vlad, deriding him as a mere pup still suckling at his mother's teat. With a violent sweep, he shatters a wooden crate of candles, demanding that the boss be located and brought before him immediately. Vlad's anger simmers as he watches his merchandise scatter in all directions, realizing that his sales prospects have dwindled. Meanwhile, nearby customers and Smile of the Rose staff inch closer, witnessing the tense standoff. The girls look on in horror, fearing the onset of a bloody confrontation, while the patrons express dismay. Fear is not what they anticipated when visiting. The man, among them, voices his shock at the destruction of valuable property and the loss of potential revenue for the establishment. Vlad drops to one knee before the scarred man, beginning to gather the scattered candles, utterly bewildered by the unfolding chaos. The man's behavior is erratic, and Vlad struggles to make sense of it all. "Brother, please, remove your foot," Vlad calmly requests, addressing the towering bandit. The man's confusion only deepens. "Take your foot off, little brother," Vlad asserts firmly. However, the scoundrel's composure shatters. Insulting Vlad, he raises his leg in an attempt to strike the kneeling candle merchant. The skirmish becomes a microcosm of warfare, a calculated battlefield in a planned scenario. Swiftly, Vlad raises the stick he holds and strikes the opponent's leg, eliciting cries of pain. With determination, he delivers another blow. Tom writhes in agony, his screams filling the air. With a bold decision, Vlad's eyes flash with fury. A perfect storm of factors aligns, ensuring victory. Rising to his feet, Vlad lands a forceful blow to the bandit's jaw with the stick. Prostitutes watch in astonishment, mouths agape at the violence unfolding before them. Both bandits and patrons of the establishment are stunned by the spectacle, while the money grubber remains relatively unfazed. In the slums, one rule always reigns supreme. The victor stands tall while the defeated kneel at their feet. The bandits appear to regain their senses, poised to retaliate against the audacious man who dared to assault their companion before them. Yet, with a single command, the money grubber quells the brewing aggression. Though the crowd eyes their commander with discontent, he expresses fondness for the puppy before him. Addressing Vlad, the money grubber apologizes for the noise of his hook, which he taps against his palm. Vlad reassures him, expressing understanding and respect for those with disabilities. The money grubber chuckles heartily, calling Vlad a cheeky rat. He then lifts Vlad's chin with his hook, privately suggesting they meet later. "Who have I brought back among the exiles?" the money grubber queries. Vlad admits he doesn't recall any of them, implying they've all met their demise. Their pleasant exchange is abruptly interrupted by a stern hail from the side. Jorge, also leading a formidable gang, demands to know the money grubber's purpose for being there. He chides the guest for failing to give warning of his visit, suggesting they could have feasted together in anticipation of the occasion. Grinning, the money grubber retorts that they don't have the familiarity to warn a gathering. Jorge suggests heading upstairs regardless, citing the bustling crowd downstairs. Scratching his head, the money grubber agrees, expressing a desire for refreshments. "We'll catch up another time," he says, assured of Marcel's hospitality by Jorge's endorsement. He affirms his willingness to verify Jorge's words. As the gang leaders ascend, Vlad, still clutching the stick, and the bandit he subdued are left behind. Vlad exhales a sigh of relief, realizing he narrowly escaped a dire outcome. "How many candles were trampled?" he muses, surveying the remnants of the box. "Hey, rising star," a voice calls out from the returning customer. The one-armed man expresses immediate fondness for Vlad, relaying Jorge's glowing commendations. He offers Vlad an alternative if he grows weary of the candle scent. Vlad rebuffs, expressing contentment with his current employment. He receives meals, wages, and lodging here. The money grubber chuckles heartily once more, offering Vlad a golden coin for the ruined candles. The one-armed man, with a slight grin, assures Vlad that if he joins him, prosperity is assured. Serving under the money grubber, whose moniker denotes wealth, promises success. He promptly dismisses the bandits accompanying him, instructing them to eat. Vlad notes the man's buoyant mood, pondering the outcome of the negotiations. Summoned by Jamila from the second floor, Vlad finds himself seated next to Jorge at the bar. Other members of the organization are scattered across the room. Vlad's surprise mounts as Jorge passes him a dagger. Circumstances have shifted, Jorge explains, and it seems essential for Vlad to be armed at all times. The somber atmosphere in the room is palpable. Jorge, Marcella, and the rank and file appear visibly disheartened. Negotiations with One-Armed Jack, aka the money grubber, have concluded disastrously. And from now on, Jorge announces, you will no longer peddle candles. Vlad questions his new role. Should he focus on debt collection or neighborhood patrol based on incoming intel? Jorge explains that One-Armed Jack has a knack for drawing people in from the outside. They're discussing a mercenary who once served as a knight. How are you? Vlad inquires. Jorge affirms Vlad's assumption. The money grubber commands a sizable force of bandits, but even with their numbers, breaching Jorge's formidable defense, a former knight, is a daunting task. After all, a flock of sheep will never overpower a lone wolf. However, if they were to enlist the aid of a swordsman of knightly caliber, the balance of power could shift instantly. Indeed, Jorge acknowledges their organization is currently at a disadvantage. That's precisely why he needs Vlad. Soon, he'll assign the newcomer his first task. Harbin, disabled with severed fingers that impair his mobility, defies his physical limitations with remarkable intellect. Through self-taught literacy and mathematics, he now employs his knowledge to serve Captain Hoover. Observing Harbin, Vlad realizes the potential for advancement through dedication and learning. You can rise to greater heights with effort and education, lad, he remarks, holding a stick against the backdrop of distant city buildings. Yet, he's disheartened. His mentor always seems to find fault with his actions. A month ago, after being struck by a black bolt of lightning, Vlad began hearing a voice in his head. Every time he picked up an object resembling a sword, even a stick, he would awaken. I should buy holy water instead of a sword, Vlad muses during his training session, but my head is spinning. Pay it no mind. The more I respond, the more tightly he clings to me. Stay focused, keep pushing until the end. Concentrate your strength and mind, then strike. Less angle in your elbow. Vlad grasps the stick and executes a sharp chop. If only what I did was merely a swing. Vlad desperately tries to make sense of the situation. Then this is the way of the sword. The hero envisions a male human figure extending a finely crafted sword. What in the world is happening in my head? He wonders as the moon casts its glow upon the majestic snow-capped mountains. It's impossible to defy your destiny, complains a man, wiping a bloodied sword with a piece of cloth. The biting winter wind chills him to the bone. Before us stands a middle-aged blond man clad in a black raincoat. Suddenly, a series of sounds reaches his ears. Quite intriguing, he muses, a grin playing on his lips. Is this mere coincidence or calculated? Well, might as well follow the trail of these sounds. Eventually, he's instructed to halt. You've arrived at the appointed place. Are you Stanga? A voice calls out from the trees. Indeed, and you must be Vlad. The man responds to the finally revealed interlocutor. I've heard you come from humble origins, yet your fair hair and blue eyes could easily deceive one into thinking you're of noble descent. Vlad remains stoic in the face of these remarks, simply handing Stanga an envelope from his employer. So you've rescued a knight-turned-mercenary from his pursuers, Stanga remarks after perusing the message. No wonder your employer sought my assistance. Vlad offers no retort to the verbal jab, merely stating that it's time to embark on a journey lasting a couple of days. Stanga gazes at Vlad's back in disbelief. Along the journey, his companion persists in needling Vlad. I'm starting to question my decision to follow this fool, Stanga mutters. He doesn't even have a clear destination in mind. Who in their right mind would use the migration of birds as a signal? If you make one more wrong move, I swear I'll end you. Vlad, naturally, finds this disconcerting. Just trust me. I won't fail my first mission, he reassures his fellow traveler. Stanga reflects. He deliberately presents himself as aloof and grim, yet this young man remains unfazed. A grin spreads across Stanga's face. No wonder Jorge took a liking to him. He's a promising material for our work. Amidst the nighttime forest, with magnificent mountains looming in the distance, Vlad and Stanga sit by a small cave's flickering bonfire. The blue-eyed youth gazes pensively into the distance, while Stanga, gripping a knight's sword, visibly displays his discontent. Finally, he inquires about Vlad's constant scrutiny. It seems you're seeing a retired knight up close for the first time in your life, he remarks. Yes, Vlad replies. Conversation does seem to be a challenge for you. You're quite uncouth, Stanga. Where do you hail from? Dasha. Quite the quaint village. You lucked out by not crossing me then. I might have diced you up without a second thought, Stanga jests. The exchange takes a more substantial turn as Stanga produces dried meat. After cracking another joke, he presents it to his companion. Stanga notices the freshness of the beef and hopes Vlad has some in his provisions, but Vlad admits he hadn't planned for it and asks if Stanga has his own food. I do, but your offering looks much more appetizing, Stanga admits. Against this backdrop, his own pungent rations seem lacking. Boy, any burning questions for me? He suddenly asks. Stanga proposes a deal. He'll answer one of Vlad's questions for every stick of meat. This opportunity won't come again. However, Vlad defiantly opts for the dried meat. In response, Stanga mockingly retorts, How many sticks do you want then? Just say it straight. Stanga is affronted. He's no beggar, and he's determined to save face. The knights were handsomely compensated initially, he reveals, but that's precisely why he got sacked, Vlad surmises. It's an uncomfortable truth for a knight to concede, but that's precisely what it is. By his age, Stanga is 42. Do you possess the knowledge of aura? Vlad abruptly inquires. You're quite the cunning one, Stanga grins. All knights have the capacity for aura, but wielding it effectively in combat is no easy feat, so can you or can't you? Vlad scrutinizes Stanga, who appears on the verge of capitulation. He produces a dozen sticks of dried meat and offers them all if the knight demonstrates his aura. Stanga regards him with a hint of reluctance. Knights aren't supposed to accept extra rewards, Stanga admits, but sometimes one can't help but indulge, especially when feeling a bit peckish. Meanwhile, Vlad trembles with anticipation. It seems he's about to witness this phenomenon firsthand. Rising to his full stature, Stanga grasps his sword with both hands and positions the blade before his face, closing his left eye. Vlad queries the necessity of the final action. I must summon forth the power within my soul, Stanga explains, urging Vlad to observe closely. This is the essence of knighthood. Initially, the sword begins to emit a faint glow, followed by a radiance emanating from Stanga's open eye. It's so brilliant that Vlad is compelled to shield his eyes. It's aura. Stanga assumes a defensive stance, angling the glowing weapon forward and slightly downward. In the night city, Vlad and Stanga stand at the foot of a towering wall. The knight grumbles, likening himself to a rat. Vlad responds that in the slums, it's preferable to blend in like a rodent than stand out like a knight in shining armor. The conversation shifts as Stanga expresses dissatisfaction with his mental state. It's challenging here. A knight is meant to embody honor, and the surroundings signal something awry. Vlad reassures his companion that he's guiding them through covert passages. It's not safe to approach through the main gate, where he might be recognized. Stanga silently acquiesces. All right, let's move, Vlad continues. You can freshen up once we arrive. The duo traverses the city streets, Vlad leading with Stanga and his sword following closely behind. Stanga notes the eerie silence. Vlad attributes it to the late hour. As they progress, something peculiar catches their attention. This area usually looks like this, inquires the visitor to the city. The native contradicts this assumption. It appears there's been a genuine skirmish here. Outside the restaurant where Vlad is employed, A dozen lifeless bodies sprawl amidst scattered daggers and swords, a grim testament to recent violence. Follow me. I'll lead you to a back entrance known only to members of our organization, Vlad instructs. When asked about himself, he responds that he'll use the front entrance. It might divert the attackers' attention if they're still lurking nearby. After bidding farewell, he vanishes into the darkness. The entrance to Rose's smile is marred with blood. Vlad enters a scene of devastation. Tables lie in ruins, chairs overturned, and provisions scattered across the blood-drenched floor. Amidst the chaos, a wounded Jorge stands alongside Marcela, her expression stern. Jorge recounts that the money grubber struck first, and the attacker's prowess was remarkable. Vlad inquires about Jorge's condition. Jorge admits that engaging in combat with a knight is a rare occurrence for him, so things aren't looking great, but he's more concerned about whether Vlad brought the knight. Vlad confirms that he did, explaining that the main entrance seemed under watch, necessitating his use of the back entrance. He assures Jorge that the knight should already be inside the establishment. Excellent. Jorge seethes with anger. Tomorrow, he'll confront the money grubber, and this time, he'll resolve all our issues once and for all. The boss turns to Vlad, inquiring about his impressions of Stanga. He won't flee, don't worry, Vlad reassures, noting that Stanga struck him as a fairly decent person, despite his past as a candle salesman. The conversation delves deeper into Stanga's character. Jorge extols his nobility, while Vlad praises his agility and dexterity. Jorge emphasizes the importance of a knight, maintaining their physical well-being for longevity. In a surprising revelation, Vlad discloses that Stanga possesses the ability to wield aura, promising a potential victory in the impending battle. Jorge is suddenly taken aback. Vlad confirms that he witnessed it firsthand. Jorge grabs his sword, ordering Vlad to stand behind him. Stanga doesn't possess aura, he declares with a menacing glare. What do you mean? Vlad's disbelief is palpable. A figure emerges from the dimness before them, whom Vlad had mistaken for Stanga. The man brandishes a drawn sword. Regardless, you did well, he acknowledges Vlad. It's been a while, Center addresses him. The knight's visage is stained with blood. Can't hide my age. The winter chill cuts deep today. Stanga hears the coded signal emitted by Vlad, a near-perfect mimicry of sound, but the silhouette of a blond man in a raincoat moves away from the corpse lying in the snow, beside which rests a fractured sword. Are they truly foolish, or is this deliberate? Ponders the assassin. The lifeless eyes of the deceased stare blankly at the sky. The impostor Stanga and Jorge stand facing each other, swords drawn, poised for combat. You've changed, remarks the impostor. Why seek me out now? Questions the genuine Jorge. Count Gar has fallen, reveals the impostor. Jorge fixes him with a steely gaze as he pours himself a drink. The impostor Stanga divulges that news of Gar's demise hasn't yet been made public, but soon it will be common knowledge. The adversaries lock eyes intently. Raising his glass in a toast, the knight proposes, "To our fallen Count Gar." These words incense Jorge, who denounces the impostor as a traitor and charges towards him. The impostor Stanga peers through the amber liquid swirling in his glass, effortlessly deflecting Jorge's assault with a single motion, sending him hurtling to the side. Jorge, Marcela, and Vlad watch in a mix of fear and astonishment as the false Stanga's cloak billows with his movement. And to the new Count Gar, Sir Sigmund, he concludes his toast. Goodwin. Jorge bellows furiously, launching herself at him once more. The knight defends himself with his sword against the furious onslaught from Rose's smile boss. Knight Jorge, deserter, return to base immediately. This is Sir Sigmund's first order, Goodwin informs his adversary. Sigmund is no lord of mine, Jorge snarls. Goodwin, parrying Jorge's blows, reveals that the Count never expected Jorge to return willingly. He doesn't want her to. The battle rages on. Jorge and Goodwin clash fiercely, each blow sending sparks flying in all directions. Marcela, it's too dangerous here, Vlad shouts, guiding her away from the chaos unfolding before them. Together, They flee the room where the knights are locked in a deadly duel. Vlad escorts Marcella to the first floor of Rose's Smile. Barley and his apprehensive companions inquire of Vlad. Vlad escorts Marcella to the first floor of the Smile of the Rose, while Barley and his apprehensive companions inquire about the commotion above. Urgently, Vlad calls for the remaining boys to gather and rush to the scene where Jorge, in grave peril, desperately needs assistance. Unfortunately, it appears that their intervention may come too late. As Vlad and Marcella arrive, they witness Jorge plummeting from the second floor, eliciting horror from Barley and his cohorts. Following Jorge's fall, Goodwin emerges before the onlookers, having just dealt a decisive blow to his adversary. "Your decisions are always foolish, Jorge." Goodwin's voice booms as Jorge's body crashes to the ground, prompting his allies to gather around him. Despite initial stillness, Jorge begins to stir, attempting to rise to his feet. Goodwin gazes down with a gaze of condemnation, signaling the finality of his judgment. In a swift motion, Vlad hurls a dagger obtained from Jorge toward Goodwin. Yet, the seasoned knight adeptly intercepts with his sword, deflecting the blade to embed into the floor. A mutual exchange of appraisal ensues between Goodwin and Vlad, each meeting the other's gaze with intensity. Goodwin swiftly closes the distance to the stunned Jorge. Vlad attempts to warn his friend with a desperate cry, but before he can rise to his feet, Goodwin delivers a devastating blow. Jorge remains on his knees, seemingly unable to rise. The sword must have struck true. "You simply had to obey orders that day," Goodwin asserts. "I am not a mere pawn. I won't blindly follow commands like a dog," Jorge retorts weakly. "No, you are a knight," Goodwin counters. Despite his injuries, Jorge looks at Goodwin with a mixture of disdain and fury, attempting to rise once more to resume the confrontation. Meanwhile, the organization members who rushed to Jorge's aid gathered behind him. A sinister glint flashes in Goodwin's eyes. "I am weary of this today," he declares, his left eye closing. "We need respite," he continues, sensing the impending climax. Vlad dashes toward Jorge with all his might, but time is slipping away. Goodwin's raised sword begins to emanate a luminous glow. Vlad screams at the top of his lungs, but mere vocalization cannot alter the inevitable. The room becomes suffused with mystical energy, enveloping Barley, his comrades, and Jorge. Goodwin reopens his left eye, and the magical torrents flood the Smile of the Rose entirely. Vlad shields his eyes with his hand to avoid being blinded by the brilliance. When the radiance subsides, nothing but ruins remains of the establishment, reduced to near total destruction. Struggling to rise amidst the debris, Vlad finds himself beneath two collapsed beams, the floor strewn with rubble. Shocked by the harrowing events he has just witnessed, he questions aloud, "What in the world was that?" His attention shifts abruptly as he realizes someone is standing nearby. It's Chorus, Vlad realizes, blood seeping from his wounds. "This can't be real," Vlad murmurs in disbelief. The man who once extended a helping hand to a destitute orphan from the slums, who garnered more respect from Vlad than anyone else, the man the boy believed to be invincible. Vlad's thoughts are interrupted by a soft glow of moonlight. Goodwin holds Jorge's severed head in his grasp, shattering Vlad's world in the cruelest manner imaginable. Driven by anguish and rage, Vlad reaches for the sword lying on the ground, screaming frantically, "Stop this madness!" With trembling hands, he brandishes the dagger, aiming at the one who has robbed him of his most cherished possession. Yet, Goodwin effortlessly deflects the strike, displaying a mastery of swordsmanship that baffles Vlad. How could this upstart from the squalid streets have acquired such skill? Goodwin regards Vlad with incredulity as the latter lunges forward once more, attempting to fulfill what Jorge had failed to accomplish. The clash of their swords echoes through the shattered remains of the Smile of the Rose, each blow carrying the weight of betrayal and loss. With a forceful push, Vlad propels himself past Goodwin, launching into a series of aerial assaults. Observing Vlad's maneuvers, Goodwin acknowledges the boy's innate abilities, noting his instinctive agility in evading strikes. Keep your focus, lad, Goodwin silently urges. Don't succumb to unconsciousness. Amidst the clash of swords, Goodwin's thoughts wander. It wouldn't be fair to snuff out such promising talent prematurely, he muses. Even if he returns wielding a sharper blade, it's intriguing to witness potential in its raw form. A vision from the past interrupts Goodwin's reverie. A knight resembling Jorge speaks, evoking a bittersweet smile from Goodwin. Addressing the kneeling Vlad, the knight implores, "Remember, Goodwin, knights are entitled to additional rewards." Confused, Vlad struggles to comprehend the knight's intentions. Denying his identity as Stanga and rejecting the notion of being 42 years old, the knight returns the excess bounty he had taken temporarily. He tosses pieces of dried meat onto Vlad's head, reserving Jorge's severed head as his rightful spoils of victory. "I'll end you," Vlad seethes through clenched teeth. Goodwin turns away dismissively. "Boy, I still have some meat left. Don't force my hand to exchange it for your life," he warns, walking away from his weary adversary. Vlad's rage burns uncontrollably as he watches Goodwin's departure, his determination to exact revenge unwavering. "I'll stop at nothing to end you," he vows menacingly. "Goodwin, mark my words, I'll see it through no matter what it takes." Later, Vlad and Yima traverse a desolate city street. A wounded young man leans heavily on the shoulder of a red-haired girl, clutching his ribs and struggling to remain upright amidst the searing pain. His labored breathing betrays his agony. "Get up," Marcella commands as she towers over Vlad, who sits slumped on the ground, his head buried in his knees. "Do you intend to die here?" she demands, her annoyance palpable. Vlad lifts his head, facing the formidable gaze of Marcella. The weight of his recent loss burdens him heavily, rendering him unable to shake off the mental anguish. "Pull yourself together, lad," Marcella insists, questioning if Vlad comprehends the disparity between them and those from a different part of town. She elucidates that they possess opportunities. Should they falter, they can always recover and resume their lives as though nothing happened, a luxury they can afford. Marcella gestures toward the corpses strewn across the first floor of the Smile of the Rose. "This is the consequence of failure," she emphasizes. "For us, a mistake can be fatal from birth. Don't squander the chance you've been granted." Marcella grips Vlad's shoulders, shaking him in an attempt to snap him out of his stupor. Though Vlad struggles to compose himself, the pain remains ever present, gnawing at his resolve. Yima leans in, offering to slow down if it's too much for Vlad to handle. Tears streaming down his face, Vlad vehemently refuses, lamenting the unfairness of it all. Suddenly, an armed figure emerges nearby, bellowing that he's found the boy, Jorge. Vlad seizes Yima's hand, and they bolt, knowing they could have numerous pursuers on their heels. With their sanctuary destroyed, they must flee, regardless of their youth. A mob wielding swords gives chase, their relentless pursuit driving Vlad and Yima to sprint as fast as their legs can carry them. If caught, there will be no mercy. Elsewhere, another group scours the streets for the pair. Determined to track down these fugitives, they're driven by the promise of a hefty bounty. One of Money Grubber's lackeys, sporting missing teeth from a previous encounter with Vlad, vows to exact vengeance in full for the humiliation he endured. The bandits agree to divide and conquer, dispersing to scour the vicinity, confident the fugitives couldn't have gone far. Behind a wooden door adorned with ring-shaped handles lurks Yima and Vlad, the latter clutching a dagger in anticipation of any potential intruders. "We can't keep running forever," Vlad muses inwardly. Rising to his feet, he instructs Yima to remain hidden until the coast is clear outside the door. Curious, she queries his plan. Vlad's intent is to scout out a secure route. With pursuers sticking together, traveling together poses too great a risk in their current predicament. Yima protests, reluctant to be separated from Vlad. He reminds her of Marcella's assurance. Assistance in reaching safety awaits them, be it at the monastery or by boat to Harbin. Tensions rise as Yima breaks down in tears, expressing reluctance to comply. Vlad's frustration boils over, hurling hurtful words. "Why won't you listen, you fool? Don't you trust that I can keep you safe? In her shattered state, Yima offers no response, prompting Vlad to question, "Who are you?" in the deafening silence. The girl seizes a knife from the ground as a man approaches, holding a lantern aloft. With caution, she brandishes the blade in his direction. Before them stands the proprietor of the blacksmith shop, clearly disapproving of the unfolding scene. He questions their presence and demands an explanation. Yet, Yima, on edge, warns him to keep his distance or face the consequences. The old man remains relatively composed, inquiring about the situation and why they've trespassed into another's home. However, Yima's shouts persist, refusing to heed his words. Observing the protective stance of the girl over the injured young man, the blacksmith discerns the gravity of the situation. "I understand," he acknowledges, urging her to lower the knife. But Yima remains resolute, unwilling to yield. "Give me the sword," she demands, gesturing towards the blacksmith's weapon. Perplexed, he questions, "The sword hanging on the wall? Are you serious?" Undeterred, Yima persists in her demand. Vlad pleads with her to relinquish the knife, but she remains steadfast in her demand. The old blacksmith, silently reflecting, realizes the grim reality of life in the slums, where survival often hinges on theft and aggression, even for the youngest among them. "I'm sorry," Vlad murmurs, his voice heavy with remorse. Yima's glare intensifies, her fury boiling over as she emits a primal cry, knife in hand. Vlad desperately calls out to her, pleading for restraint. Yet, amidst the chaos, the blacksmith remains composed. Yima's blade slashes through the air with alarming speed, and to Vlad's astonishment, he watches as Yima's fiery red curls fall from her head. The blacksmith's expression hardens as he meets Yima's gaze, her once flowing locks now shorn and her resolve faltering. With a shaky hand, she offers her shorn hair to the old man, promising recompense later. "Please, give the sword to Vlad," she implores. Gazing upon the tearful girl, the blacksmith's heart aches with empathy. Overwhelmed by emotion, he relents, his resolve softening. "Are you leaving?" he inquires, noticing Vlad still clutching the dagger. Vlad nods silently in confirmation. Observing the scene unfold, the old man reflects on his own unfulfilled desires. "This lad is daring to pursue what I've always dreamt of," he muses. "But this lass needs not only to spread her wings, but also to learn to defend herself." With a weary sigh, the blacksmith questions their arrival, rubbing the weariness from his brow. Motioning for the youngsters to follow, he leads them away. Through the snow-covered streets, a cart with large wheels trundles along, trailed by a lone figure. The blacksmith guides Yima away from the houses, past ruins and towering heaps of refuse, towards an uncertain future. Yima grimaces as she pushes the cart, wrinkling her nose at the stench of garbage. The old man chides her for her complaints, explaining that it's their only option. Their progress is interrupted by the arrival of 3 bandits, questioning the blacksmith's presence with a cart in the dead of night. The blacksmith inwardly laments, couldn't they have picked a better time? Why take out the trash now? The apparent leader of the bandits remarks on the blacksmith's fiery temperament before inquiring about the hooded figure accompanying them. "He's helping me in exchange for food. I can't manage this cart alone," the blacksmith responds. "If you're willing to lend a hand, you can do it for him." Acknowledging the blacksmith's status in the community, the bandit expresses respect but insists on verifying the situation. Lifting Yima's hood, the bandit advises her not to move, only to be met with a sudden flurry of motion as the sword flies from his grasp, narrowly missing Yima. The bandit swings the sword overhead, prompting horror from the blacksmith. Yima's contorted expression and desperate pleas for mercy evoke pity from the bandit, who ultimately relents and allows them to continue on their way. As they depart, the blacksmith casually queries the bandits about their intentions in the area, his curiosity piqued by their unexpected presence. The chief bandit identifies the man they seek as the one with golden hair, presumably the one who worked for Jorge. As the blacksmith prepares to depart, the bandit recalls another task, thoroughly inspecting the contents of the cart. He summons one of his subordinates, sending a wave of apprehension through the blacksmith and Yima. The leader advises moving the cart away to prevent dust from contaminating the other bandits. "Do it over there," he directs, gesturing to a spot nearby. The blacksmith curses his decision to take this route, but realizes there's no alternative. "There's quite a lot of stuff in here," remarks the appointed bandit, eyeing Yima with a hint of sympathy. Sensing an unspoken exchange of thoughts between them, he reassures her, "Don't worry, it's just part of the job," before probing the trash with a stick. A sense of foreboding washes over the blacksmith and Yima as they anticipate imminent danger. "But I've heard they're starting voting in Harbin by the river," the blacksmith interjects, attempting to distract himself from the tension. Confused, Yima fails to grasp the significance of his words. "So he's there now. You mentioned there must be a reason behind his actions anyway. Just thought I'd inform you. It seems the lad was merely undergoing a trial run. It's all sorted now. Carry on," the bandit conveys. The blacksmith watches with a mix of concern and gratitude as the boy, who had turned out to be unexpectedly honorable, departs. Reflecting, he recalls clearing a debt of 40 silver coins owed for his brother's life, saved by Vlad not long ago. Beneath the mound of refuse, the hero, Flock, silently expresses gratitude to his rescuer. Slowly, the cart inches away from the bandit, who has now revealed a nobler side. With the blacksmith and Yima at the helm, they guide the cart towards the imposing structure's gate. The old man informs Yima that they've arrived, the city dump. Yima bids Vlad farewell, urging him to take care of himself amidst the sea of refuse. Amidst the detritus, Vlad stands, clutching a sword. This marks the beginning of a new chapter for the boy, a dream realized for the old man. And it's all thanks to the tears shed by this girl. A radiant white light emanates amidst the squalid surroundings of the dump, contrasting starkly against the backdrop of the moonlit, snow-capped mountains. In the glow, Vlad's face reflects a sense of determination as he gazes into the distance. "Can you hear me?" he questions, lifting his sword toward the luminous glow. "Yes. Who are you?" "I don't know. You've imparted so much wisdom on swordsmanship, yet your identity remains a mystery," a voice responds, echoing in the silence. Unfazed, Vlad asserts, "That's fine. We'll aid each other. I'll serve as your memory, and you will be my sword. Even if you're a demon, it matters not." As towering figures of his nemesis loom before him, Vlad's resolve remains unshaken. "What once instilled fear in me," he reflects, "now holds no power." His eyes brim with unwavering determination. "Very well, I shall instruct you," the voice replies once more. The sword Vlad holds begins to radiate with an ethereal glow. "My sword," echoes the final voice within the hero's mind. Meanwhile, at a field army camp near the forest winter mountains, a young man with dark hair and clad in elegant attire meticulously arranges figures on a map. Observing the pieces representing various forces, he muses, "All is proceeding smoothly. This is Joseph, the second son of the House of Bees. Everything seems to be progressing too smoothly," he mused. A soldier, evidently an officer named Hare, greeted him upon his return. Joseph reciprocated the greeting. It was evident from Hare's appearance that he was formidable, with only one eye. Joseph appeared puzzled and inquired about the cause of his concern to Z. The latter responded that the destruction of monsters was proceeding as planned with minimal losses, primarily among mercenaries. "Any soldiers missing, possibly deserters?" Joseph questioned. Upon receiving the answer, he muttered, "Deserters yielding mediocre results. Now doubts will arise regarding my military prowess, both from my father, his vassals, and my half-brother Lutcher." Z listened silently to this moment of vulnerability from Joseph. As he paused, Joseph redirected his focus inward. "If things continue like this, war is inevitable. If I can't ascend as the new count, there's little doubt." Z listened to Joseph's inner turmoil in silence as Joseph paused, refocusing on his thoughts. The prospect of inevitable war loomed if Joseph failed to secure his position as the new count, a scenario with dire implications given Lutcher's likely actions. The House of B had always esteemed military prowess, a tradition solidified through its history, even Joseph's father securing power by outmaneuvering his siblings. Joseph lamented to Z about the lack of skilled blades, exempting Z from the critique. Instantly, Z interjected with pertinent information. A suspicious mercenary had infiltrated their ranks. Joseph speculated if it was a spy sent by his brother, Lutcher. However, Z clarified it wasn't in that context. Instead, he urged Joseph to witness firsthand a goblin's corpse, brutally mutilated. The gruesome sight prompted Joseph to cover his mouth with a handkerchief to stave off nausea. They were butchered like helpless infants, Z remarked grimly. He urged Joseph to survey other corpses, revealing similar fatal wounds, suggesting a coordinated, lethal force at play. Observing another goblin corpse, Joseph remarks, "The wounds here are slightly different." He pauses, scanning the scene. "Wait, do you notice the same pattern across all these corpses? Though variations exist." He turns to Z, questioning if it appears to him that the same individual is responsible for the killings. The vista reveals the magnitude of the massacre, with dozens of green bodies strewn about. Z confirms, "Indeed, young master. This one was brought in yesterday, and the first appeared about a month ago." Joseph contemplates the timeline, pondering, in just a month? Who could this assailant be? In the background, winter forest mountains loom, blood seeping from a fallen goblin. Well-armed soldiers engage in a gruesome battle against the horde, a repulsive sight. "Close the ranks, don't let any escape," commands a leader. Soldiers, armed with swords and axes, press on. Another goblin falls to a piercing spear. The battle, evidenced by the commanding tone and the satisfied expression of its leader, nears its triumphant end. He urges his comrades to vanquish the remaining goblins, rallying them for a final decisive assault. Suddenly, right behind the spearman, a colossal monster with glowing red eyes emerges, hoisting a massive club over the unsuspecting warrior. He attempts to question the stares fixed upon him, but before he can finish, he's struck down by a heavy blow. His comrades are gripped by horror, realizing the battle's outcome has seemingly been sealed. Across the field, another monstrous creature, adorned with two massive fangs stretching from its lower jaw to its nose, surveys the remaining adversaries with predatory intent. Their shock is palpable, unsure of their next move. With a deafening roar, the beast opens its immense jaws, ready to confront the opposing squad single-handedly. It grins malevolently, emitting guttural barks as it charges forward. Where did it come from? One soldier tries to comprehend. Another surmises that the monster must have decimated the fifth squad and breached their position. He orders a retreat. As they attempt to flee, they encounter a horseman wielding a sword, an experienced officer of their army. "What are you doing? Fall back immediately," he bellows. He admonishes them, stating that such incompetence won't be rewarded. One of the young warriors retorts that they weren't informed they'd be facing hobgoblins. They should have hired pricier mercenaries. His comrade suggests the knight handle the monster himself. "How dare you?" the knight bellows, drawing his sword menacingly. But before he can act, a mercenary darts beneath his horse's hooves. The hobgoblin evidently has no patience for this impending confrontation. The knight glowers at the monster, unsure of his next move. Meanwhile, a figure approaches the fray at a deliberate pace. Notably, a sword hangs from his belt, his golden hair catching the light. Making his way through the apprehensive mercenaries, he strides directly toward the hobgoblin wielding the club. "Is that Reman?" one soldier whispers. "Indeed, Reman of prayers," confirms another. "He might just pull it off this time." They silently muse, watching him arm himself. With determination gleaming in his eyes, Reman charges at the hobgoblin. The hobgoblin, taken aback by the new challenger, emits a disbelieving growl. Vlad, as they know him, slashes his sword, leaving a deep gash on the monster's side. It howls in agony, but Vlad recognizes the wound as insufficient. Inadequate strike, superficial wound, he realizes. Suddenly, a voice echoes in his mind, urging him to take cover. As the hero crouches, The hobgoblin's club sails over his head, propelled by its own momentum. Seizing the opportunity, Vlad attempts to strike, but his aim is off. The voice in his head chastises him for his perceived foolishness, accusing him of incompetence in following instructions. In response, Vlad mentally retorts that only a genius could flawlessly adhere to instructions. He opts to toy with his adversary, knowing there's no rush. With its club raised, the wounded hobgoblin charges at Vlad, but its swing misses its mark. Vlad narrowly evades, but the threat of death looms close as the enraged monster bares its teeth. The hobgoblin swings again, this time wielding the club with both hands in a vicious overhead strike. A blinding flash of light illuminates the surroundings as the weapon crashes down. As the snow dust settles, it becomes evident that the hobgoblin lies defeated on the ground. "I'm certain it's a monster. I'll have it dismembered," Joseph declares, his anger palpable. He orders Hare to promptly investigate the man's background, identified as Rehman of Prayers. Lowering his head and pressing his hand to his chest, Vlad accepts the execution order. Joseph contemplates the situation, finding the sequence of events nonsensical. The crude, erratic cuts observed on the goblin corpses suspended earlier had transformed into precise sword strokes within just a month. There's much to ponder. With the hobgoblin defeated, Vlad might take solace. Whispers of his prowess circulate among those who've bested the goblins.